In ways both expected and unexpected, Crystar is the emotional JRPG I wanted it to be. With its heart-wrenching premise, the story and gameplay of Crystar takes you through the aftermath of a traumatic event, all taking place inside a purgatory, with a group of lovable allies that make feeling sadness, relief, and a variety of other emotions interesting to go through as you make your way through its emotive world. With smooth action gameplay, a gripping, slow-revealing story, and a subtle emotiveness that is uniquely its, Crystar achieves the emotional premise it promises, and as someone who's been so excited to play it, I'm pleased to say that its story will be one I'll remember for a long time. Crystar begins when the young Rei awakens in purgatory despite the fact that she fell asleep in her room. Lost and confused, she eventually comes across her sister Mirai and they try to escape together, at least until a tragic series of events begin to unfold. Rei and Mirai are attacked by a monster, then Rei discovers she has powers to fight in purgatory and takes down the threats before them. However, since her powers are new to her, she doesn't have full control over them, so when Mirai reaches out her hand to comfort Rei, Rei winds up accidentally killing her instead. This leaves Rei stuck in purgatory alone and having to deal with what she did, and as she sheds tears about this, the demon twins Mephis and Felice, who manage purgatory, appear and strike a deal with the distraught Rei, reaping clean souls from purgatory for them and produce more Idea, a powerful crystal they collect that's made from tears, and they'll allow for her sister's revival as part of the contract as long as Rei can reach Mirai before she reaches the bottom of purgatory. Rei agrees without a second thought, with only the thought of saving Mirai in mind, and this begins her journey as an executor, snuffing out the lives of souls for the demon twins, all in a desperate effort to save her sister. In a hard journey with moral conflict, Rei thankfully isn't alone, as she's joined by an interesting group of allies, and the small size of the group really lets you get to know each character by the end of the journey. There's the young mother Kokoro, whose baby was taken from her by the soul-collecting Anamnesis, the justice-fueled daughter of a prosecutor Sen, and the unique dead girl Nanana, who wants nothing but fun and excitement, with each girl having their own purpose guiding them through purgatory as they join together. They make a weird and wonderful team, with each of the girls making me laugh and feel emotional at some point, and by the end of my near 40 hours with Crystar, together they felt like a well-developed group of characters, with each girl adding something to the emotional story. Watching Rei's and the other girls' stories unravel throughout was great to watch since I liked all of them, and every character in the story has some point of interest. And while the story could be a little slower paced and even repetitive at times since there are only a certain number of environments and areas, the emotional stories and twists in between always made things more interesting, and anything repeated was always done with purpose. From sadness, relief, anger, and everything in between, the slowly unraveling story lets a lot of emotions be felt throughout the story, which is exactly what I wanted from its tear-filled premise. And without spoiling things, the way it led to its satisfying ending will keep it memorable in my mind as a story full of twists and turns and interesting characters that I'm glad to have witnessed. And all the little twists in between led to something that I thought was well worth seeing in the end. Complementing the slow-building story of Crystar is its action gameplay, which is much more fast-paced. This active system sees you taking enemies down in an almost hack-and-slash way thanks to the amount you usually end up facing at one time and the simple method of taking them down, although there is a little more to it when it brings in the emotional theme and gives you more options to make battles fun and exciting. As you beat up enemies, in the bottom corner is a tear-shaped gauge that fills up as you land hits on the enemy or cry on the field, and if you fill it up all the way, you can press L1 to release your guardian to help out and land even more hits that all end in a beautiful finale of a special attack that can clear the field if used at the right time. This, with the fact that it can also freeze fast-moving enemies for a second, makes it not only look cool but fairly useful in things like boss battles, with bosses tending to move quickly. And in general, I'm pleased to see that things like this, or trying to chain attacks to make the tier gauge build up quicker, added a nice bit of strategy to keep things interesting, especially when facing many enemies at once, all while bringing the game's theme into things. In addition to tiers, you can also change quickly between all 4 of the girls by using the D-pad, and strategy is even added here since if you switch characters while the health gauge has some red in it, that can be recovered while the character is switched out, and the character you switch in gets an attack bonus. So it always felt useful to switch in and out and get good at using all of them, especially with the fact that all the girls play a little differently that made it fun to get to know all of them. Finally, contributing to the atmosphere of Crystar are the torments you receive when you take down a glowy glowy pink enemy that sees their lost words flash on screen and torment you throughout the rest of the field. These torments show again when you cry and also reduce your stats, and since you need to collect these as they can be converted into weapons, this adds a little more to combat as it directly affects how strong you are. Outside of the gameplay aspect, you also receive a part of their memoir, which tells you the story of how they came to die that is both dark and a reminder that these souls were once living from a story aspect. So with the premise tied into the battle in many ways, I like that what could just be a simple action combat system is much more interesting from all these things together. The lost words that torment Rei can be purified outside of Purgatory in Rei's bedroom, and it's here where you can cry and turn your tears into sentiments, which are basically weapons that come from Rei's tears. In the multifaceted systems, you can use the initial purification to get these weapons, then use Harmonia to combine multiple of the same sentiments together to make them stronger, and finally Metonia, where you can add an extra ability if the sentiment has a slot, which can also be rerolled to get better abilities. It's this idea of turning tears into strength that is not only an interesting mechanic to make weapons with, but is another cool, practical application of the game's theme. And I also liked the subtle touch of these sentiment descriptions growing as you combine them together and make them physically stronger that gives an idea that perhaps they're getting emotionally stronger as well, and it's an interesting system to use and help add to the emotive tone of the game while getting stronger. While I've spoken very positively about Crystar so far, this isn't to say it's perfect, and I definitely had some criticisms, at least when I started. Stages can feel repetitive with their maze-like designs that you can always expect to take you the most indirect way to the goal. The story has repetitive elements along with other little things like enemies just being reskins of others with new backstories. But it's things like those new backstories that give them meaning as you get to know the new backstory through the memoirs. The beautiful music and visuals add to the atmosphere. There are new crying animations that appear later in the game showing the effects of the journey on Rei, and the overall emotional tone of the game really carries it to still feeling like a good game in spite of some of its flaws. Maybe not everyone will feel the same way, but since I was playing it for this kind of emotional tone and feel like it really delivered, I didn't totally mind the things I could be critical of, and even found it innovative the way it uses what's already there in multiple ways to keep things interesting. From small differences in music, visuals, scenes, and elements to keep things interesting. If you're into the emotional tone like I was in Crystar, it does a good job of having that be prevalent in all parts of the game, so while it's not perfect, the way it uses everything creates an emotional world that I think is uniquely its own, and it's that kind of unique atmosphere that's left me wanting more, as it's like nothing else I've played. Thankfully, there are a few nice post-game things to do, as I have a few side stories I can look into that were unlocked, there's fighting bosses and enemies to complete my Memoirs of the Dead, and other things like difficulty and sentiments to play around with too. So at the very least, I have a good excuse to play in this unique world again, and since I found things like the Memoirs particularly interesting, it's nice to have a good reason to return sometime, and since I still feel attached to the world, I hope I get some time too soon. After plenty of excitement for Crystar's world, I'm pleased to say that I liked it a lot, and it certainly didn't disappoint. Seeing the girls grow through a trialing, tearful journey was a pleasure to witness through its gripping narrative with plenty of twists and surprises along the way, and the small cast of characters made it easy to really get to know the interesting group and see everyone's story grow together. There is repetitiveness to be found in areas like enemy design and the world, but if you get into its unique systems and tone like I was, it's easy to put that aside, and the way it uses new and repeated elements with purpose most of the time helps add to the emotive world in a way that makes everything still feel interesting. All in all, Crystar is a fantastic effort with an emotional atmosphere that is uniquely its own, and after seeing its beautiful characters, music, story, and world all together in this finished and memorable form, I'm pleased to say its atmosphere makes me want to come back to it again someday. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to try Crystar and if you plan to pre-order it. And if you do plan to pre-order it, since this is my first pre-release review, the release date for Crystar is August 27th on PS4 and on Steam. There are multiple packs. There's one with an art book. The Steam version has a 10-track soundtrack that I have the Japanese copy of, which is really good. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and a special thank you to Spike Chunsoft for reaching out to me and offering this game to me pre-release. It means means the absolute world to me because I was so excited about this, as everyone already knows, and I'm just so grateful I could bring this review out so early. As usual, you can like and share this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel for more JRPG content like this, and ring that bell to get notifications on whenever I post so you don't miss a thing. You can check out more videos here, and you can find me on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at JRPG Jungle. And until next time, thank you so much, bye!